What's up, everybody? Jared and Chris back here for the second episode of our podcast, tentatively titled Jared and Chris's Awesome Podcast.
We still need to get an episode title.
Any suggestions for better titles would be greatly appreciated. But we're back at it for a second time. We got some feedback from some of our friends, and we'll try to incorporate that a little bit. But today, we'll be talking about what a lot of people in our generation really appreciate, and that's the idea of traveling. Are you a big traveler, Jared?
I am, recently. I grew up in a family where we didn't do a whole lot of traveling growing up, but I knew as a kid, I was always wanted to travel. I think I remember when I was in the 5th grade, I wanted to do like a exchange program that my elementary school was doing, and my parents quickly shot that down.
Sure.
It's like, being a black man in Texas was already hard enough. Why are they going to send me to some foreign country?
Newsflash for those of you who can't tell from the voice, Jared is black.
Yeah. Okay, that's strike 20.
Another in joke.
So actually the first time I went traveling was in undergrad. I did a study abroad program to Greece, and ever since then I've visited a lot of different countries.
Nice. All right. So Jared is an avid traveler. I'm a pretty big fan as well, but not until recently, I don't think. I didn't really travel until my mid-20s. It just wasn't very financially available for a long time in my life. But only recently did I get to experience like how great it is to kind of experience the world and kind of really broaden your horizons. But with that, let's kind of break this down into a couple topics here. So what's a dream destination for you, Jared? Where have you never gone but always kind of thought about going?
Let's see. I've never been to China. I've had a couple different opportunities to go to China, and it seems that every time I have a chance to go, where I was planning to go, something's come up, and I had to cancel. So I remember when I was in high school, one of my best friends was from China, and I was going to go with him to his grandparents' house outside Shanghai, and then he had a family emergency, so we had to cancel.
Oh,
and then I was planning to go to China for GATE.
What is GATE?
For those who aren't in the Duke Fuqua bubble. GATE was like a short-term study abroad program that we had at our MBA program at Fuqua. I think it stands for like Global Academic Travel Expedition or Excursion.
You learned a lot here, huh?
And so there were three options: China GATE, South Africa GATE, and Latin American GATE. And I wanted the China GATE, but it filled up so quickly, and so I had to cancel that one. And then I interned with Microsoft last summer, and they were going to send me to China to this manufacturing facility outside Shenzhen, I think that's what you call it. And I had everything booked, ready to go, was ready to go to the airport, and then 2 days before our departure, we had a production delay on a product that we were working on, and they decided to halt the trip to China.
Oh, man.
Did, right. And so every time I've gone to China, something's come up. So one of these days I will go to China. So maybe that.
Yeah, you seem to have a lot of time coming up. Maybe China's in the cards this summer.
Yeah, definitely. What about you?
Dream destination, I gotta say, it's hard to pick one, but something that I've always wanted to go to Rome, and specifically the Vatican. Not much of a practicer now, but I grew up Catholic, so I've always had a fascination with the whole process of how they choose the new pope, and with the smoke pillar, as well as and maybe even going to the Vatican during like Easter Sunday or something would just be a really cool dream of mine. Just to see his presence, right? I'm not saying that he's like a better person than other people, but just getting to meet him and see him in person would just be like, for me, probably even better than meeting the president of the United States. I think that'd be really fascinating. Obviously, the surrounding area, like Italy's known for a lot of great food and a lot of great culture, being the epicenter for a lot of European practices and a lot of history as well. That's definitely on my bucket list. Don't know if it's the next one. Because
let me ask you this: like, when you are thinking about which countries to go to and you travel, like, what is your process? Like, what do you look for in determining which countries to go to? So, for example, for me, at least at this stage of my life, I kind of always say the traditionally safe countries that are like, like, no offense, but like somewhere in France, like Paris or London.
Sure.
I can do that when I'm 50, 60 years old.
Yeah.
At least while I'm still somewhat young and still healthy. I'll go to a little more harsher places.
Yeah.
And I try to tend to avoid like big cities. So
Yeah.
I love like going out to the beach, like kind of going to remote places. Like I went to Croatia for a month,
Yeah.
just chilled out there. So like when you think about which countries to go to, like what do you look for?
I think I'd follow a similar mentality. It's not just in terms of safety, but thinking in terms of the overall physical taxation on one's body, right? So thinking about the weather as well as how well I'm able to maneuver myself around based on some type of transportation system. So if I'm like a 70-year-old person, I definitely wouldn't be able to get myself around in like New York City, right? That'd be really difficult for me. So I wouldn't even consider such a city like when I'm a particular age. And I think food is definitely kind of higher on the list, right? And this all kind of relates to one's age, really. Is where am I going to be comfortable, right? I'd say that overall, like a place like Peru, pretty safe. Lima's pretty established. You could definitely do that when you're older. Mm-hmm. But the activities that are associated with Peru, like if you're going to do, the 4-day hike that to get to Machu Picchu, definitely can't do that when you're a little older.
Right.
So I think that all kind of ties back to what you mentioned. So kind of broadening it out, not just in terms of safety, but in terms of the body and what you're able to accomplish on those trips. If you're just taking pictures of a museum or something, obviously you can go to the Louvre when you're 80 years old.
Yeah.
But I'd say we kind of match up there as well. So we've talked a lot about some of our past experiences. I'm kind of curious, what's a really bad experience that you've had while you were traveling?
So I'm actually going to change it up a little bit from what we talked about off air. But one of my favorite countries I've been to actually had one of the worst experiences I've ever had, and that was in India. So India is probably by far one of my favorite countries I've ever traveled to.
Yeah.
And it was my first time going to India. This is in 2011, so I was studying abroad in India.
Yeah.
And we were flying from Bangalore to New Delhi. Mm-hmm. And I'm someone who, at this time at least, had a kind of a fear of heights. So like, I don't like flying. I love to travel, but I don't like the process of traveling. Like being 30,000 feet in the air.
Yeah, it's claustrophobic, screaming babies everywhere, people are coughing all over you.
Yeah, exactly, right. And so we're on this plane, and we're on this particular airline. I don't know if I should, I'll go ahead and call them out, Indigo Airlines.
And we're not going to get sponsored by Indigo Airlines anytime soon for this podcast.
And we're flying from Bangalore back to Delhi. It's like maybe like a 2-hour flight maybe. And I kid you not when I tell you that we had the roughest landing I've ever experienced on a flight. Like not just like, the plane's kind of shaking. I'm talking about like just like sudden drops as we're trying to land in Delhi.
Yeah.
And
you thought you were done for.
Yeah, like you could hear like the baggage stuff moving. People were like having to grip onto their seats because it was just horrible.
Right.
And then we had a horrible landing. It felt like we were about to skid off the runway.
Oh, jeez.
But you know what? Once we got through it, I thought maybe we just had some very turbulent flight or had very turbulent winds. Okay, didn't think too much of it. Maybe about a couple weeks later, I'm back in the United States. Finishing up school. I'm reading my USA Today paper, and on the front page, I see this article, this headline, where it says Indigo Airlines fined from a route going from Bangalore to Delhi, and they were fined because they found out that they had pilots who were flying with expired licenses.
Oh, that was your flight.
And I said, holy crap. I said, was this the flight that I was on? Like it was in the same time period. Yeah. It was in the same route from Bangalore to New Delhi. And we definitely had a rough landing. And I'm like thinking to myself, holy crap, I was flying. I already don't like flying. And I'm on a plane with a pilot who had an expired license. And so to this day, you can ask some of my Indian friends. I always talk about this a lot. I will never fly Indigo Airlines ever again, and we don't get sponsorship from them, so I'm not flying them. So
you heard it here first, folks. Don't take Indigo Airlines.
So that was a particularly bad experience for me.
Oh, jeez.
I don't know.
So similar experience, well, not exactly similar experience, but within the context of a good trip, one in recent memory for me was when I went to Iceland a couple, 2-3 years ago, and great trip, beautiful nature out there. Saw the Aurora Borealis, probably my first night there. Just all around great company as well. But something about Iceland is that you do a lot of driving, right? Like you'll do maybe 8 hours of driving a day if you're trying to cover the entire country within a 10-day span like we were doing. And there are large stretches of driving in which you don't really make contact with another human soul, even on the treacherous parts of the road.
Yeah.
So we were traveling around mid-March in which there was still a lot of snow buildup, and we were reaching kind of a huge incline in which there was a lot of snow, so our cars were kind of slipping around a little. And honestly, there were no guardrails on the sides of the road, so our car could have easily careened over to the side. So there's at one point, I was sitting with 3 other friends of mine in this SUV, and one of the drivers, she was not completely confident of a driver. She wasn't even confident driving the U.S., let alone a brand new country. And we just kind of slid out of control. We almost careened over the side of the road. And honestly, if that had happened, we would not know what to do. None of us had international signal. There were no homes or people around that knew what to do or would be able to contact the correct authorities to help us out. And that would have been all around bad news. And we eventually decided to double back on the route that we took and take a much longer route, about 2 hours, to get to our eventual destination. But overall, I would say that was a near-death experience, on an international trip, which is something you definitely don't want.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So that would probably be one of my worst experiences. What are some I guess some tips that you have when you're traveling? It can range anywhere from looking for tickets to booking hotels or things to do. Anything pops off in mind that you think a lot of people should know?
Well, I'm definitely not like a travel guru by any means, but I think one thing that I do is, and this was kind of old, maybe airlines have caught up, but every time I book a ticket, I don't book on my regular browser. I go to incognito mode because usually before you book a ticket, you're doing a lot of Google searches.
Sure.
And I've been in group situations where one friend buys a ticket and we pass the computer along, we buy our ticket, and by the time it gets from that person to me or to the last person, the ticket prices are gone by $120.
Jeez. So the browser cookie history is working
the cookie
against
history,
you.
right? Yeah, exactly. So that's one thing that I would look into. I also kind of know what kind of person you are when you travel. So for me, I'm someone where I don't necessarily, when I go to travel, I don't necessarily want to have a jam-packed day.
Yeah.
The worst vacation I've probably ever been on was a vacation with my parents. Sorry, Mom. And, we went to New York, which is already a city that I don't want to go to.
Sure.
But every day, it was from 7 to 8, we're doing this. From 8 to 9, we go to here. 9 to 10, we do that. And my mom loves that. But I'm someone who just kind of likes to relax. Yeah. Kind of get away from the crowds, right? So it doesn't help that we were staying in the middle of Times Square.
Oh no, that's probably where you want to avoid.
Right. Yeah. So go when you go on vacation or you go travel, go somewhere where that kind of complements your style.
Yeah. So if you want some breathing room, make sure that you allow yourself some buffer time.
Yeah.
Whereas you want everything planned to the minute.
Yeah.
Get an Excel sheet ready.
Yeah. And then lastly, I would always say, I think travel is a great opportunity to learn, not just about other people, but also about yourself. And one of the ways that you can do that is to put yourself in challenging and different environments. Going to London and Paris, I'm sure it's fine and great, and you can learn a lot of stuff there.
Yeah.
Right. But if you're able to, put yourself in, I went to Namibia for a couple of weeks, back in March. I went to India for a couple months for study abroad. Those are some extreme countries that have extremely just culturally different things are just culturally different from America. But you can learn a lot, and you learn a lot by talking to people. So one thing that I always try to do is when I'm riding on a local bus or a train in different countries, just talk to the person who's to my left or to the right, find out more about them. I remember I was in Croatia and I talked to one of the mailmen in Croatia. He told me so much about the country.
Oh, wow.
And about what it was like, and Yugoslavian war and stuff. And that's just a great way to learn. So use travel to learn. Is tips that I would have.
Great advice, Jared. To add on to that, I'd say some tips, and maybe I'm fishing for a sponsorship here, who knows, but an app that has really proven useful to me is an app called Skiplagged. And Skiplagged kind of takes advantage of missed prices by the engines that are backing the pricing algorithms on the airline websites, and sometimes they'll be able to give you really drastically reduced prices on international trips, round trip as well.
Oh.
So I think my aunt had been able to book a trip for herself and her family of 5 round trip from California to London, all for about like $150 each.
Damn.
Yeah, and that is like an astounding price. So
Yeah.
check the apps. Skip Lagged, maybe Kayak. I think those are really valuable. You never know what you might find aside from the typical Google flights. Second, I would say try, if you're working, try to start taking time off maybe around like the Thursday or the Wednesday. You don't want to take it on a Monday because you're kind of not really allowing yourself to get that first weekend of extra vacation time, right?
Yeah.
I think the ideal vacation period for any long trip is probably from a Thursday all the way to the next Tuesday or so. So you're giving yourself an additional 4 days with those 2 weekends in addition to the time that you actually request off. And the airports are a little less busy when you're flying out those days as well.
Yeah.
And that's why I noticed that work is pretty hard to get out of, and we want to take as little time out as possible. So I think that's a pretty nifty strategy to use. And I'd say that definitely kind of explore the local versus the high end typical restaurants and sites. I think again, when you go to London or Paris, there's a Louvre, there's a Tower Bridge. But like Jared was saying, if you're able to talk to a local and kind of get like a real beat on what's actually happening in that city, you really get a richer experience. Like past example is that based on saying yes to a lot of locals, I was able to get into an odd like ritual shamanistic dance with a tribe in Zimbabwe, which was just like an amazing experience, right? Something that you definitely wouldn't get when you're joining like a tour group or something like that. And also to echo what Jared had said, like really know what you want. Like some people will kind of go to particular countries such as check off a box, but if you know that you're not like a physical person, if you don't like hikes, if you don't like nature, don't be going to these countries that specifically are known for nature, right? And vice versa. If you don't like big cities, don't be going to big cities. It's good to expose yourself, but at a certain point, know what you want and make sure that you kind of don't waste your time on any trips that you don't like.
Yeah, I find Lonely Planet is a good resource.
Yeah.
And usually every time I go to a country, I always check out Lonely Planet just to see like what are the activities, food, the kind of things that not just the touristy things, but things that like the locals do as well.
Yeah.
It's a great resource.
Yeah. Oh, another one that I just forgot, and I think this is only applicable to young people like myself and Jared. Is when you're at this point in your life, you're probably building out your network. You probably have a lot of friends that are all across the globe. Really try to get the opportunity to stay with them or have them guide you around when you're in a new city or a new country that you don't understand, or even if you don't know the language. Having a local guide kind of take you to all these different places and giving you a local's perspective is I think is just way more cost effective, as well as really educational for really understanding a particular town.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think definitely one of my more positive experiences would be just like making sure that someone is there to kind of guide you around, and not that you're flying blind.
Yeah.
Is that all we got? I think any other topics you want to cover on this?
I'm curious to know, like, what is of all the countries you've been to, like, what is your favorite experience?
My favorite experience would definitely be Japan. I'd say, have you been to Japan?
No, I have not been to Japan.
I'd highly recommend it. Japan is one of those countries that really has something for everyone. And I think that's a phrase that's thrown around pretty often. But I really do believe that Japan has something for foodies, something for people who are really into nature, really into hikes, and also for people who are into good city life and good parties. And when I landed in Tokyo initially, and it was just like a neon city that really never slept, and you could see any type of entertainment that you want amongst all the different neighborhoods. There was like the anime heavy neighborhoods. There were the ones with parks, and there were the club areas, and the food was all around fantastic and healthy, and I felt like it wasn't too expensive either. I even saw like a sumo show, which was just amazing. And then taking the train, the long distance train to Hakone, which is a small spring town, it was a very relaxed, kind of spirited away type of town where the people all knew each other by first name, and got to relax in some of the springs. Then we made our way over to Nara, which is like a town that was just filled with deer. There were just reindeer walking around, and you could pet them, you could feed them. And then made my way over to Osaka and Kyoto, and again, just amazing cultures. There's just temples everywhere. So overall, I think Japan really does have something for everyone, and I would highly recommend it to anyone. No one has ever said, I regret going to Japan.
All right.
Yeah.
Definitely add that to my list for sure.
Yeah, how about you?
I would probably go with New Zealand. I went to New Zealand last year for a couple weeks. I think New Zealand is just like, it probably checks the box off of everything that I look for in a vacation. Like I already mentioned earlier, like I like to go to kind of far, remote places. Well, you can't get further or more remote than New Zealand. It's like an 18-hour flight from Houston, I think, or maybe 16 hours.
Do you see the Lord of the Rings Hobbiton houses?
So, shameful admission, I've actually never seen Lord of the Rings movies.
Oh,
so
Jared. Jeez. You're into Game of Thrones, but you're not into Lord of the Rings.
Maybe I'll go back and rewatch it. But so some people who I went to New Zealand with went to like Hobbit Town or something. I don't know what it was called.
Yeah.
I had no reference or affinity towards it, so I skipped that whole tour.
Oh.
But what I did love about New Zealand though was just the openness, like fresh air. Like Queenstown, New Zealand, which is in the South Island, is called like the adventure capital of the world. And so I've already mentioned earlier that like I had kind of like a fear of heights, where I basically got over it because I did like one of the world's highest bungee jumps in New Zealand. And like you talk about someone being terrified, I almost crapped my pants, but like, I'm totally glad that I did it.
Yeah.
White water rafting, like we did grade 5 rafting, which is the most intense you can get. So I think anything above grade 6, like once you get to anything above grade 5, so if you hear like a grade 6 raft, that means that man can't survive it. And so if a man survives a grade 6 raft, that grade 6 raft gets downgraded back to grade 5. And so like,
wow, you turned into an adrenaline junkie out there.
I know. And so I love whitewater rafting. I've done it 3 times since then.
Yeah.
I'm trying to do it again coming up shortly.
Yeah.
And so just like New Zealand was just like perfect weather. The people were great. It was quiet, but there was still a lot of things to do, a lot of outdoors activities, which I love. So I kind of know that if all goes well in life, and if this podcast takes off and we get some good sponsorships, then I'll probably
from Skip Lags.
then I'll probably get some maybe a nice summer home or vacation home or something in New Zealand. And so I know for me that's probably like one of my favorite experiences.
All right, cool. All right, so there you have it, New Zealand, Japan, and all our travel expertise. So again, that's our second episode. Any other topics that our viewers would like us to talk about, feel free to make a comment about it. And you can check us out at ChaseNeed87 on Instagram. Yeah, and myself at poor_hobobo. I'll explain that in another podcast. And make sure to like and subscribe, and we will talk to you guys next time.
See ya.